The transport ship touched down on the red soil of Seven, kicking up dust that glowed in the light of three distant suns. Stepped off the ramp, carrying his worn backpack and a case of scientific equipment. He was small for a human, standing barely over 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair and tired eyes that had seen too many long space journeys. The settlement spread before him like something from an ancient tribal painting. Massive tents made from unknown animal hides stretched across the rocky ground. Towers of carved bone marked the boundaries, and everywhere giants moved with fluid grace. They were beautiful and terrifying. They stood 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in scales that shifted from deep blue to purple in the sunlight. Four arms moved in perfect coordination as they worked. Their faces were angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed faintly yellow. When they turned to look at the arriving human, those eyes held nothing but amusement. "The Terran has arrived," announced the pilot, a merchant who had barely spoken during the 3-day journey. He pointed toward a group of figures approaching from the largest tent. "The elders come. Try not to embarrass your species too much, little one." Said nothing. He had learned long ago that words meant little until actions proved them. The Elder Council approached with the kind of confidence that came from being apex predators. At their head walked Warlord, his scales darker than the others, marked with scars that told stories of 100 battles. Beside him strode, whose 4 arms each bore weapons that looked well used. "So," his voice rumbled like distant thunder, "Earth sends us this. A small, soft thing with only 2 arms. He leaned down, studying the way one might examine an interesting insect. "The report said humans were weak, but I did not imagine this." Laughter rippled through the gathered. Warriors who had stopped their work to watch pointed and made sounds that needed no translation. Mockery sounded the same in every language. "I am," he said simply, meeting eyes without flinching. "I'm here to study your culture and survival techniques as part of the Galactic Exchange program." "Study us?" snorted. "What can a creature with soft skin and fragile bones learn about survival? You would not last one night in the Crystal Canyons." "Perhaps not," admitted. "That's why I'm here to learn." More laughter. A young warrior called out, "Look, he admits his weakness. At least the little pink thing knows his place." "2 arms," another shouted. "That should be his name, 2 arms the soft Terran." The name stuck immediately. Within moments, every in earshot was using it, turning his supposed limitation into a joke they all shared. Waved a hand for silence. "The human has come under the Galactic Treaty. We will honor it, though I doubt he will stay long once he sees what real survival means." He gestured to someone in the crowd. "Take the Terran to the communal lodge. Find him a corner where he won't get stepped on." A smaller pushed through the crowd. Smaller was relative. She still stood over 7 feet tall, but her scales were a lighter shade of blue and her movements were gentler. "Come," said, her voice less harsh than the others. "I am the tribe's healer. You will stay near my workspace." As they walked through the settlement, stopped to stare and laugh. Children ran alongside, poking at with sticks and squealing when he turned to look at them. Warriors made exaggerated gestures of weakness, pretending to collapse under the weight of their own weapons. "They mock everything new," said quietly. "Do not take it personally." "I don't," replied, though his jaw was tight. "I've heard worse." The communal lodge was a massive structure that smelled of smoke, leather, and something Sharp couldn't identify. Sleeping areas lined the walls, each marked by personal totems and weapons. Led him to a space near the entrance, the least desirable spot, where cold wind would blow in and people would constantly pass. "It's fine," said before she could apologize. He set down his pack and equipment case. "Thank you for your kindness." Studied him with those yellow eyes. "You are not what I expected. The reports said humans were arrogant and demanding." "Some are. I'm just here to learn and survive." "Survival here is not like survival on Earth, I think. The great hunt begins in 3 days. The tribe will track thornback serpents through the crystal canyons. It is our most sacred ritual." She paused. "You should know warriors have died on these hunts, many warriors. I'd like to observe and document it if I'm allowed." His eyes widened. "You want to go on the great hunt? 2 arms, you would not survive the first day's march, let alone the hunt itself." "Maybe not, but I have to try." That evening approached Warlord during the communal meal. The massive hall fell silent as the small human walked across the floor, every eye tracking his movement. "Warlord," said, standing before the elder's raised platform, "I request permission to accompany the great hunt." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then laughter exploded through the lodge like a bomb. Warriors slapped the ground with their lower arms while eating with their upper arms. Some laughed so hard they choked on their food. Smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing meat. "You wish to join the great hunt, you who can barely carry your own equipment?" "Yes." "Why should I allow this? So we can watch you die, so we can waste time rescuing you when you fall behind." "Because that's why I came here, to observe, to learn, to document your ways," kept his voice steady, "and because refusing would dishonor the Galactic Treaty." The laughter died. No one challenged on matters of honor. The warlord leaned back, his 4 arms crossed in a complex pattern. "Very well, little Terran, you may come. When you beg to return to the settlement after 1 day of march, we will all remember your bravery and your foolishness in equal measure." He gestured dismissively. "Now go, rest. You will need all your weak strength." As turned to leave, he noticed a figure standing in the shadows near the lodge entrance. A taller than most, with scales so dark they were almost black. The warrior's eyes glowed brighter than others, and across his chest hung dozens of ceremonial tokens, more than any other member of the tribe. Their eyes met for just a moment. The warrior's expression was unreadable, neither mocking nor kind. Then he turned and disappeared into the night. "That was," whispered, appearing at side, "the elite tracker, the finest hunter our tribe has known in 3 generations. If you see him watching you, be careful, he misses nothing." "I'll remember that," said, staring at the darkness where the legendary tracker had vanished. In his sleeping space that night, surrounded by the sounds of warriors sharpening weapons and telling stories of past hunts, checked his equipment and prepared his pack. His hands were steady despite the fear sitting cold in his stomach. They thought he was weak, they thought he would fail, maybe they were right. But he would try anyway. That's what humans did best. They tried when everyone said they couldn't. They endured when everyone said they wouldn't. Lay down on the hard ground and closed his eyes. In 3 days, the great hunt would begin. In 3 days, he would show these giants what a small human could do. Or he would die trying. The morning of the great hunt arrived with cold wind and red sunlight. 20 warriors gathered at the settlement's edge, their 4 arms checking weapons and supplies with practiced efficiency. They wore light armor made from serpent scales and carried blades that gleamed with a strange blue edge. Stood among them his small backpack looking pathetic next to their massive gear. He had prepared as best he could: water purification tablets, emergency rations, medical supplies, climbing equipment, and his scanner for documenting the journey. Every warrior who passed gave him the same look, amusement mixed with contempt. "2 arms actually came," one warrior laughed. "I thought he would hide in the lodge." "Maybe he wants to die with honor instead of shame," another replied. "At least that's something." Raised his primary arms for silence. "Warriors of the Red Stone tribe, today we begin the great hunt. We track the thornback serpent through the crystal canyons. We honor our ancestors with strength and skill. We return with the sacred hide, or we do not return at all." He pointed at. "The Terran comes as observer. He is not our responsibility. If he falls behind, we do not wait. If he dies, we leave him where he falls. Understood?" "Understood," the warriors roared. "Understood," said quietly. The elite tracker stood at the front of the group. He had not spoken a single word since assembly. Now he simply turned and began walking toward the distant mountains. The hunting party followed. The pace was brutal from the first hour. The moved with long, loping strides that covered ground quickly. Had to jog to keep up, his shorter legs working twice as hard. The warriors noticed and laughed. Look at Two Arms run, like a child chasing adults. Perhaps we should carry him like a pet. Saved his breath for moving. Talking was a luxury he couldn't afford. The landscape changed as they traveled. The red soil gave way to crystal formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. Some were clear as glass, others dark as smoke. They caught the sunlight and threw it in strange directions, making it hard to judge distance or depth. By midday, his legs burned and his lungs ached. Sweat soaked through his clothes despite the cold air, but he kept moving. When the warrior stopped to rest, he dropped his pack and immediately checked his feet for blisters. Bad blisters meant infection. Infection meant failure. He checks his weak feet, a warrior named Sung called out. Sung had been since the journey began, always finding ways to make life harder. Maybe Two Arms needs softer ground to walk on. Should we carry him on our shoulders? The other warriors laughed, ignored them, applying medical tape to a developing hot spot on his heel. Prevention was better than cure. That afternoon, the terrain grew worse. They entered a valley where crystal spires rose hundreds of feet into the air. The path between them was narrow and treacherous. Sharp edges waited to slice open any who stumbled. Toxic gas vented from cracks in the ground, forcing them to navigate carefully. Fell behind. The gap between him and the hunting party widened from 10 feet to 20, then 30. He pushed harder, but his body had limits. The warriors didn't look back. "Wait," he called out, immediately hatting himself for showing weakness. Sung turned, grinning. "Did Two Arms say something? I thought I heard a mouse squeak." "I need just a moment." "We don't stop for tired Terrans," Sung said. "Keep up or be left behind. Your choice, pink skin." Walking in the middle of the group, glanced back with something like concern. But she said nothing. To show sympathy would make her look weak among the warriors. Gritted his teeth and ran. His scanner bounced against his hip. His backpack felt like it was filled with stones, but he ran. That night they made camp in a shallow cave. The warriors built a fire and roasted meat from their provisions. Sat apart, eating his rations and studying the crystal formations around them. His scanner picked up interesting electromagnetic patterns, but that wasn't why he was really looking. He was watching how the crystals reflected sound, how they channeled wind, how they created natural barriers and passages. "Still awake, Two Arms," Sung approached, carrying his portion of meat. "Surprised you made it this far. I thought you would be crying for your transport ship by now." "No," said simply. "No, that's all. Where is the human pride I heard about? Where are the clever words? I'm saving my energy for tomorrow." Sung laughed. "Tomorrow will be worse. Tomorrow we enter the deep canyons. Tomorrow the real hunt begins. You won't survive it." "Maybe." The warrior's smile faded. "You don't talk like the humans I've heard about. You don't brag or threaten, you just accept." "Would bragging help me keep up with you?" "No." "Then why waste the breath?" Sung stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The next 2 days were hell. The path grew steeper, the air thinner, the temperature swings more extreme. During the day, reflected sunlight off the crystals made it hot enough to cook. At night, the cold bit deep into bone. His body screamed at him to stop. Blisters covered his feet despite the tape. His muscles felt like they were tearing with every step. His lips cracked and bled, but he kept moving. The warriors' mockery continued, but it became less creative. They were focusing on the hunt now, their attention shifting to the signs found on the ground, scratches on crystal, disturbed soil, traces of serpent scale. On the third day, disaster nearly struck. They reached a narrow canyon blocked by a recent rock slide. Massive boulders and crystal shards formed an impassable wall 30 feet high. Studied it with all four arms crossed. This was not here last season. We must backtrack to the Western Passage. It will add 2 days to our journey. The warriors groaned. 2 days meant more supplies consumed, more energy spent, and less time for the actual hunt. Approached the rock slide, his scanner in hand. He had been watching it while the warriors discussed, his tired mind working through calculations. He said quietly, "May I suggest something?" Turned, irritation clear in his glowing eyes. "What could you possibly suggest, Terran?" "The crystal formations in this pile are unstable. See here." He pointed to several large crystals wedged at odd angles. "They're bearing most of the weight. If we use sonic resonance at the right frequency, we can collapse this section cleanly." He indicated a spot to the left. "It would create a passage we could climb through in a few hours instead of days." "Sonic resonance," Sung snorted. "This is hunter territory, not a science lab. We don't have your fancy equipment." "Actually, my scanner has that function. It's damaged from the journey, but I think I can modify it too." "Enough," interrupted. "We backtrack. I will not risk warrior lives on Terran tricks." "Wait." The voice was deep and quiet, but it cut through all other sound. Everyone turned. Stood at the base of the rock slide, his hand pressed against the crystal formation. He had been examining it while they talked. Now he looked at with those bright yellow eyes. "Show me," said, the first words he had spoken on the entire journey. His hands shook slightly as he approached. The elite tracker's presence was intense, like standing near a barely controlled fire. He explained the principle quickly, using sound waves to weaken the crystal structure at specific stress points, causing a controlled collapse. Listened in silence, then he gestured for to proceed. The next hour was tense. Worked with his scanner, making adjustments, calculating frequencies. The warriors watched with skepticism. Sung made jokes about them all being buried alive by the stupid Terran's plan. "Ready," finally said. "Everyone should stand back." He activated the scanner. A high-pitched whine filled the canyon. The crystals began to vibrate. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like breaking glass amplified 1,000 times, the formation collapsed. Not explosively, but in a controlled slide that settled exactly where had predicted. Dust rose in clouds, but when it cleared, a rough passage was visible through the debris. "Silence." 4 hours to clear and climb through," said quietly, "instead of 2 days around." Walked to the passage, examined it, then looked back at. He nodded once, a gesture that somehow carried more weight than all of speeches combined. "Move out," ordered, his voice tight. "Clear the passage." As the warriors began working, Sung approached. His expression was complex, not quite respectful but no longer cruel. "That was clever, Two Arms," he said. "Clever like a coward, but it worked." Said nothing, he was too tired. But as they climbed through the passage hours later, continuing toward the deep canyons where the serpents lived, he noticed something. The mockery hadn't stopped, but it had changed. It was quieter now, less certain. And the elite tracker had spoken to him. That had to mean something. The hunting party entered the Crimson Hollows on the 6th day. These caves were named for the red crystals that covered every surface, casting everything in blood-colored light. Sound behaved strangely here, sometimes echoing forever, sometimes swallowed completely. It was a place that confused the senses and punished mistakes. Led them deeper into the cave system, following signs only his trained eyes could see. A scratch here, a scale fragment there, the faint chemical scent of serpent musk. The thornback was close now. Every warrior felt it, their bodies tense with anticipation. Stayed in the middle of the group, his scanner detecting heat signatures and mapping the cave passages. His body had adapted somewhat to the brutal pace. He no longer fell behind every hour. His blisters had hardened into calluses. His lungs had learned to pull more oxygen from the thin air. He was still the weakest member of the party, but he had stopped being dead weight. "Fresh tracks," announced, kneeling to examine deep grooves in the cave floor. "Less than 2 hours old. The serpent is hunting." The warriors their weapons. This was the moment they had trained for, the confrontation with one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Thornback serpents could grow 40 feet long, with crystalline spines that could pierce armor and jaws that could crush stone. Killing one was the highest honor a hunter could achieve. They moved forward in battle formation, led, reading the environment, commanded from the center. The strongest warriors formed the outer ring, ready to engage first. Then the world exploded into chaos. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Massive shapes burst from the shadows, not serpents, but something worse. Ravagers. 6-legged predators with chameleonic skin that had made them invisible against the red crystal walls. They were ambush hunters, and the hunting party had walked straight into their trap. The first Ravager hit the right flank, its jaws closing around a warrior's arm and tearing it away. Blood sprayed across red crystal. The warrior's scream echoed through the caves, multiplying until it sounded like 100 voices crying out. "Ravagers, defensive positions," roared, but the order came too late. The creatures were already among them. A second Ravager crashed into the left side, scattering warriors like toys. A third dropped from the cave ceiling, landing directly on top of 2 fighters. Panic spread. Something had never seen in the before. Moved like flowing water, his blade flashing as he engaged the first Ravager. But even the elite tracker couldn't be everywhere at once. "Fall back to the narrow passage," commanded. The hunting party retreated in chaos. Warriors stumbled over each other. The Ravagers pressed their advantage, their camouflage making them nearly impossible to track in the confusing light. Another warrior went down, dragged screaming into the darkness. Ran with the others, his heart hammering. This was beyond anything he had trained for. These weren't intelligent opponents who followed patterns. These were raw killing machines driven by hunger. The party split. Some warriors made it to the narrow passage had indicated. Others were cut off, forced to flee deeper into the cave system. Found himself in the second group, along with 3 wounded warriors. One was missing an arm. Another had deep gashes across his chest. The third could barely stand. "This way," pulled them into a side chamber barely large enough for them all. "We need to stop the bleeding or they'll die." His mind raced. They were trapped in a small chamber with wounded warriors, and Ravagers could be anywhere. He could hear movement in the caves, clicking sounds, scraping claws, the heavy breathing of predators on the hunt. "We need to defend this position," said, dropping his pack. "Treat the wounded. I'll set up perimeter." "You," one of the wounded warriors laughed bitterly. "What can 2 arms do against Ravagers?" "More than a bleeding warrior can," replied, already working. He pulled out his remaining equipment, chemical flares, reflective sheets, climbing rope. His hands moved quickly, setting up in positions around the chamber entrance. "What are you doing?" asked as she wrapped the worst wounds. "Ravagers hunt by sight and smell, right? Their camouflage works because they match their environment." Placed his scanner on the ground, adjusting settings. "But they still generate heat. My scanner can detect that even if we can't see them." He strung rope across the entrance at different heights, creating trip lines. He positioned reflective sheets to create confusing mirror images in the red light. He placed chemical flares at strategic points, ready to ignite. "They're coming," the one-armed warrior said. "I can hear them." Checked his scanner, 3 heat signatures approaching, large ones. His mouth went dry, but his hand stayed steady. "Everyone stay behind me. Don't move until I say." "You're insane," the warrior muttered. "We should be fighting, not hiding behind a Terran." "You're wounded. Fighting now means dying now. Let me try." The clicking sounds grew louder, closer. watched his scanner tracking the heat signatures, two moving along the walls, one approaching directly. He held his breath. The Ravager appeared in the entrance, its body matching the red crystal so perfectly it was almost invisible. Almost. Could see its outline now, could track its movement. He threw a chemical flare directly at its head. The creature recoiled from the sudden bright light and harsh chemical smell. In that moment of confusion, kicked one of the trip ropes. The Ravager stumbled, and Reading's intention struck with her blade, driving it deep into the creature's exposed throat. The Ravager thrashed and died, its blood mixing with the red crystal floor. Two more, said, eyes on his scanner, one on each side. This time he was ready. He positioned the reflective sheets to create the illusion of movement in multiple directions. When the second Ravager entered, it attacked a reflection, exposing its real position. The wounded warriors, understanding the tactic now, struck together despite their injuries. The third Ravager was smarter. It waited, watching from beyond the entrance. Could see it on his scanner, could see it calculating. It won't come in, whispered. It knows it's a trap now. Then we need to make it angry, said. He pulled out his last chemical flare and threw it into the passage where the Ravager waited. The creature roared, a sound that made the walls vibrate and charged, had counted on rage overcoming caution. As it burst through the entrance, he activated a second function on his scanner, the same sonic resonance that had collapsed the rockslide days before. The cave walls around the entrance vibrated at just the right frequency. Crystal shards broke free from the ceiling, falling like deadly rain. The Ravager was caught in the cascade, pinned and crushed. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing. By the ancestors, the one-armed warrior whispered. 2 arms just killed a Ravager. 3 Ravagers, corrected, staring at with new eyes. He killed 3 Ravagers using tricks and a damaged scanner. Slumped against the wall, shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Not dead, just scared and lucky. No, the one-armed warrior said. Not luck, strategy. You saw what we couldn't see. You used the environment like a hunter. A sound from the passage made them all tense. But it was who appeared, his dark scales covered in Ravager blood. Behind him came and the surviving warriors. His glowing eyes swept the scene. The 3 dead Ravagers, the defensive setup, the wounded warriors being treated by, and sitting against the wall looking half dead himself. Their eyes met across the chamber, nodded slowly, that same gesture that carried impossible weight. How many did we lose? Asked quietly. 4 warriors, replied, his voice heavy. And Sung is missing, dragged deeper into the caves. He's probably dead. No, said, struggling to his feet. My scanner picked up another heat signature that way. He pointed to a passage branching off the main cave. Human-sized. No, sized, moving, still alive. Sung said, but the caves that way are unstable. Going after him could kill us all. Checked his scanner again. The signal was faint but steady. He's wounded but breathing, maybe trapped under rubble. We cannot risk more warriors for one who is probably already dead, said, though his voice held regret. We must. I'll go, interrupted. I'm smaller. I can move through unstable areas more safely, and I have the scanner to find him. Every warrior stared at him. You would go alone? Asked. To save a warrior who has mocked you, tormented you, tried to get you killed. Yes. Why? Thought about it, because he's part of the pack, and pack doesn't leave pack behind. Silence, then stepped forward. He pulled a blade from his belt, a small knife by standards, perfectly sized for human hands. Go quickly, said. We will secure this position. If you don't return in 1 hour, we leave. Took the knife, feeling its perfect balance. 1 hour, understood. He disappeared into the dark passage, alone, following his scanner toward a warrior who hated him. Behind him, he didn't see worried expression, or thoughtful look, or the way watched him go with something like respect in those yellow eyes. He was too busy trying not to die while saving someone who wanted him gone. Moved through the dark passage with his knife in one hand and his scanner in the other. The blue light from the device was his only illumination. The passage was narrow and treacherous, with crystal formations jutting out at odd angles and the floor uneven and cracked. He could hear Sung before he saw him, ragged breathing and occasional groans of pain. The scanner led to a small cavern where part of the ceiling had collapsed. Massive slabs of crystal and rock formed a crushing pile, and beneath it, pinned from the waist down, was Sung. "Two arms," Sung's voice was weak, disbelieving. "What? Why are you here?" "To bring you back." Examine the rubble carefully. One wrong move would bring more down on both of them. "You should have left me. I was cruel to you. I tried to make you quit, tried to get you hurt." Sung coughed and blood flecked his lips. "You owe me nothing." "That's true," agreed, setting down his scanner and studying the problem. "But I'm here anyway." He worked methodically, using his smaller size to crawl into spaces where I couldn't fit. He wedged climbing equipment under key pieces, creating leverage points. He used his knife to chip away at smaller debris. Every movement was calculated. Every piece removed was chosen for minimum risk. "I don't understand humans," Sung said, watching through pain-glazed eyes. "We mock you, hurt you, reject you, yet you risk your life for us." "Maybe that's what makes us human," replied, straining against a particularly heavy piece. "We're stupid enough to care even when it doesn't make sense." It took 40 minutes to create enough space for Sung to pull himself free. Both his lower legs were crushed, but he was alive. Fashioned a rough splint from equipment and helped the much larger warrior stand on his upper arms, using them like crutches. The journey back was slow and agonizing. Every few steps, Sung needed to rest. Every rest used precious minutes. But they made it, emerging into the main chamber with seconds to spare on its 1-hour deadline. The hunting party had made a defensive camp. When they saw and Sung appear from the dark passage, silence fell. "Two arms brought me back," Sung said as rushed forward to help. "I was trapped and waiting to die. He came alone and freed me." Approached, "You did this thing, a warrior's deed. Why?" Was too tired to think of a clever answer. Because it was the right thing to do. That night, the mood in the camp was different. The warriors who had witnessed defense of the wounded spoke to those who hadn't. The story grew in the telling. How the little Terran had used tricks and intelligence to kill 3 Ravagers. How he had gone alone into danger to save a warrior who hated him. Sung sat by the fire, his legs treated and splinted. When passed by, he called out, "Two arms, come here." Approached carefully. Public apologies among warriors could be complicated. Sung looked up at him, then did something that shocked everyone watching. He bowed his head in the gesture of respect, a gesture normally reserved for elders and proven heroes. "I was wrong about you," Sung said loudly so all could hear. "I called you weak, I called you useless, I tried to break you." He raised his head, meeting his eyes. "But you are stronger than most warriors I know. You saved my life when you should have left me to die. I am in your debt of earth. No longer will I call you Two Arms in mockery." Nodded, accepting the apology. "No debt, just try not to need saving again. I'm running out of equipment." Laughter rippled through the camp, real laughter this time, not mocking but shared. Later, as sat alone at the edge of camp checking his battered equipment, a shadow fell across him. He looked up to find standing there, silent as always. "Walk with me," the elite tracker said. They moved away from the camp, into a small side passage where they could talk privately. Studied for a long moment, his yellow eyes reflecting the distant firelight. "You move through the world differently than we do," finally said. "Show me how." For the next several hours, explained his methods. How he read patterns in data instead of just using his senses. How he planned 3 steps ahead, calculating risks and probabilities. How he used tools to extend his limited physical abilities. how endurance was sometimes more valuable than raw strength. Listen to everything, asking sharp questions. Then he began to teach in return. He showed how to read microsigns in disturbed soil, the difference between tracks that were hours old versus days old. He demonstrated how to predict animal behavior by understanding their needs and instincts. He revealed how to sense environmental changes through smell and air pressure. "You see what we miss," said. "We rely on strength and proven methods, but sometimes the world changes and old methods fail. You adapt. That is a hunter's greatest skill." "I learn from the best," replied. "As do I," said, and there was no irony in his voice. The next morning announced they would resume the hunt. Sung and two other badly wounded warriors would return to the settlement with an escort. The remaining hunters would continue tracking the thornback serpent. Said, using his actual name for the first time, "You have proven yourself in battle and rescue, but the thornback hunt is our most sacred ritual. Do you still wish to continue?" "I do." "Then you will scout beside at the front. The elite tracker has requested it." Murmurs ran through the warriors. To scout beside was a position of honor given only to proven hunters. No outsider had ever been granted this. "I accept," said simply. They moved out within the hour. This time walked at the front with their different methods complementing each other. Where saw tracks, saw patterns. Where scanner detected anomalies, interpreted what they meant. It took them a day to pick up the thornback's trail again. The massive serpent had moved deeper into the cave system, following underground water sources. They tracked it carefully, both hunters reading the signs. Then noticed something on his scanner. The serpent's heat signature is wrong, too cool, and these tracks. He knelt to examine them more closely. "See how they drag, the spacing is irregular, something's wrong with it." Sniffed the air, his four nostrils flaring. Chemical scent, foreign, not natural serpent musk. They followed the trail to a massive collapsed crystal dome. Through cracks in the walls, they could see the thornback serpent inside. It was huge, 45 feet long, with crystalline spines running down its back that glowed faintly in the dim light. But had been right. Something was very wrong with the creature. Its scales were discolored, patches of dull gray instead of healthy iridescent blue. It moved sluggishly, and foam dripped from its mouth. Around its lair, vegetation was dead and crystals were cracked and blackened. "Crystal poisoning," said, checking his scanner readings. "The groundwater here is contaminated with dissolved crystal fragments. The serpent's been drinking it and slowly dying." His expression was grim. A poisoned serpent is twice as dangerous, unpredictable, aggressive. It will fight to the death with no strategy, only rage. "There's something else," pointed to a cluster of large, crystalline eggs half buried in the floor. "She's protecting her clutch. She's dying, but she won't abandon her young." Called the hunting party forward. When they saw the situation, debate erupted. "We kill it now," one warrior argued. "Poisoned or not, the hide is still sacred." "But she guards eggs," another protested. "The honor code forbids killing a mother protecting her young." "The honor code assumes a healthy mother," the first warrior countered. "This one will die anyway. We would be merciful." Raised his hands for silence. "You are elite tracker. You have led us to the prey. What do you counsel?" Looked at the dying serpent, then at the eggs, then at, "What do humans do in such situations?" All eyes turned too. He took a deep breath, thinking carefully. "We find a third option," he said. "One that honors both the hunt and the mother's sacrifice." "Explain," ordered. "We relocate the eggs first, carefully, to a safer area where they can hatch naturally. Then we lead the serpent to clean water. There's a mineral spring 3 kilometers back. The minerals might purge the poison from her system. She could survive." "And the hunt," a warrior demanded. "We came for the hide." "The hunt is about proving ourselves against a worthy opponent," replied. "Fighting a sick, desperate mother defending her eggs proves nothing, but relocating her young, healing her, and then facing her when she's at full strength, that proves everything. Silence, the warriors looked too. The elite tracker stood still for a long moment, his forearms crossed. Then he nodded. "We hunt with wisdom, not just weapons," said. "The Terran sees a path, we take it." No one dared question the elite tracker's judgment. "Then we begin," said. "May the ancestors guide us." Looked at the massive serpent, at the eggs that held future life, at the warriors preparing for a hunt unlike any they had attempted before. This wasn't what he had expected when he came to 7. But then again, nothing had been what he expected. And somehow that was perfect. The operation required perfect timing and absolute trust. Half the warriors would keep the dying thornback serpent distracted and 3 others carefully extracted the eggs from the lair. "Remember," said as they prepared, "the crystalline shells are harder than they look, but the internal membranes are delicate. Drop one wrong and the infant inside dies." The warriors nodded, their usual pride tempered by the responsibility they were about to shoulder. This was no longer just a hunt, it was something more complex, more meaningful. The distraction team moved first. They entered the collapsed dome through the largest opening, weapons ready but not immediately aggressive. The thornback raised her massive head, foam dripping from her jaws. Her eyes were clouded with sickness, but her maternal instinct was sharp. She positioned herself between the warriors and her eggs, her crystalline spines rattling a warning. "Now," whispered. His team entered through a crack in the opposite wall, moving with agonizing slowness. The eggs were each the size of a human torso, heavy and awkward. Used his scanner to check each one for signs of life before they moved it. Strong heartbeat, healthy development. This one could be moved. The first egg came free from its sandy nest. 2 warriors carried it between them, their 4 arms cradling it carefully. They disappeared through the crack, heading toward a secondary cave system had scouted earlier, one with clean water and stable temperature. The serpent noticed something was happening behind her but couldn't turn without exposing her eggs to the warriors in front. She hissed, a sound like steam escaping under pressure. Her body coiled, muscles trembling with the effort of staying alert despite the poison ravaging her system. "Second egg," murmured. This one was smaller, possibly younger. He checked it twice before allowing the warriors to move it. 3 eggs extracted, then 4, then 5. On the 6th egg, disaster nearly struck. One of the warriors stumbled on loose crystal, and the egg shifted in his grip. Lunged forward, his smaller hand steadying it despite the weight. His arms screamed in protest, but he held until the warrior regained balance. They shared a look, no words needed. The warrior nodded respect and they continued. 7 eggs, 8. The serpent was becoming more agitated. She could sense her clutch being moved. Her spines began to glow brighter, a sign she was preparing to attack despite her weakness. "Last 2, said calmly, though even he was sweating. "Quickly now." The final eggs were the largest, probably the oldest. They pulsed with visible life, the infant serpents moving inside their crystal shells, marveled at them even as his muscles trembled from exertion. Life was life, no matter what form it took. "Done," he said as the last egg was safely removed. All eggs relocated. The distraction team heard the signal and began to withdraw. The thornback lunged at them, but her movements were sluggish, uncoordinated. The poison had weakened her too much. The warriors retreated without casualties. In the secondary cave, the eggs were arranged in a warm, stable environment. Stood guard over them, her healer's instinct extending to these unborn creatures. "Phase 2, said, leading her to the spring. This was more dangerous. They needed to make the serpent follow them while keeping her angry enough to chase, but not so enraged she attacked blindly. It required perfect judgment of distance and timing. Had studied the serpent's behavior patterns on his scanner. She'll follow the scent of her eggs. If we carry something that touched them, pieces of the nest sand, she'll track it. They prepared bait bags filled with the sand and fluids from the egg nest. Warriors would run relay, each carrying a bag for a distance before passing it to the next. The serpent would follow the scent trail all the way to the mineral spring. The plan worked better than had hoped. The thornback emerged from her damaged lair, her huge head swinging as she caught the scent. When she saw the warriors carrying her nest materials, a sound came from her throat, not rage, but desperate maternal need. She followed. The relay began. Warriors ran ahead, the serpent pursuing at her poisoned, stumbling pace. 3 kilometers through crystal canyons, past toxic vents, over razor-sharp formations. The serpent grew more aggressive as they went, her sickness making her unpredictable. Twice she nearly caught the relay runner. Once, she struck at a warrior who got too close, her fangs missing by inches. But they led her onward, always keeping just ahead, always holding her attention. Finally, they reached the mineral spring, a pool of clear water glowing faintly blue from underground minerals. The lead warrior threw the bait bag into the center of the pool. The thornback paused at the water's edge, her clouded eyes trying to focus. She could smell her nest. She could see the warriors surrounding her, but she was dying, and some deep instinct told her this water might help. She plunged in. The reaction was immediate and violent. The serpent thrashed as the minerals made contact with her poisoned body. Foam erupted from her mouth, not white but black, the toxins being purged. Her spines glowed brighter than ever, throwing wild shadows across the canyon walls. The warriors watched, weapons ready but not interfering. This was between the serpent and the poison now. Hours passed, the thrashing slowed, the black foam stopped. The serpent lay still in the water and for a terrible moment thought they had failed, that the cure had come too late. Then her spines began to glow a healthy blue instead of sickly green. Her scales brightened, color returning to the gray patches. Her eyes cleared. The thornback serpent raised her head from the water and looked at the gathered hunters. She was weak but healing. She was alive. And she was very, very angry. Back ordered, she'll attack now that she's recovering. The serpent lunged from the pool with shocking speed. But she wasn't aiming to kill. She was returning to her eggs, following her instinct. The warriors scattered, letting her pass. She moved through the canyon like flowing water, heading back toward her lair. "Follow," commanded. "We see this through." They tracked her to the secondary cave where her eggs waited. The serpent found them, circled them, checked each one with her massive snout. When she was satisfied they were all alive and well, she coiled around them protectively and fixed the warriors with an intelligent, measuring stare. Understanding passed between hunter and hunted. "We saved your young. You live. This is enough." The serpent lowered her head, not submission but acknowledgement. The hunt was over. There would be no killing today. The journey back to the settlement took 3 days. The warriors were quiet, processing what they had experienced. They had gone seeking glory through death and found it through life instead. Word of their return spread quickly. The entire Red Stone tribe gathered as the hunting party entered the settlement. Warlord stood at the center, his 4 arms crossed, waiting for explanation. "We returned from the great hunt," announced. "We tracked the thornback serpent. We faced ravagers and lost warriors. But we return with something more valuable than hide and bone. We return with wisdom." He gestured for to step forward. The elite tracker moved to the center of the gathering, and with him he brought. "This human came among us small and weak," said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We mocked him. We called him 2 arms and Little Pink. We bet on his failure." He paused. "We were wrong." Gasps rippled through the assembly. This human killed 3 ravagers to protect wounded warriors. He went alone into darkness to save a warrior who tormented him. He found a path to honor both the hunt and life itself. Yellow eyes swept across every face. He does not have our strength, our claws, our size, but he has what makes a true hunter: the will to endure, the mind to adapt, and the heart to protect the pack. Reached to his chest and removed his ceremonial hunting token, a piece of crystal carved with generations of honor marks. Every hunter in the tribe wore such tokens, but this was legendary. It had been worn by the greatest tracker in tribal history before being passed to him. The tribe held its collective breath. The tribe mocked the little Terran, said, placing the token around's neck. I name him brother. He is pack now. This is my judgment as elite tracker, who challenges it. Silence. To challenge was to challenge centuries of tradition and honor. Then Sung stepped forward, limping on his splinted legs. I do not challenge, I affirm. Of Earth saved my life. He has my loyalty. Stepped forward. I affirm, he fought beside me when death came silent. One by one, the warriors who had gone on the hunt stepped forward. Each gave affirmation. Each acknowledged what had done. Finally, Warlord himself approached. He studied for a long moment, then extended his primary right arm in the warrior's greeting, palm up, exposing vulnerability, offering trust. Clasped the massive arm with both of his smaller hands. The gesture looked absurd, a child holding an adult's hand, but no one laughed. Welcome, brother, said. Your place in the Red Stone tribe is secured. You have proven that strength comes in many forms, and wisdom is sometimes more valuable than weapons. The tribe erupted in ceremonial chants. The sound echoed across the red soil of Seven, carrying into the mountains where perhaps a certain thornback serpent heard it and understood. That night there was a feast. Sat beside, the ceremonial token hanging from his neck, feeling impossibly heavy and impossibly light at the same time. What happens now? Asked quietly. Now looked at him with something like humor in his yellow eyes. Now you teach our young hunters your methods, and I teach you ours. We learn from each other as brothers should. I'd like that. Good, because tomorrow we begin training. And I promise you, brother, I am a much harder teacher than the Canyons were. Laughed, the first genuine, unreserved laugh since arriving on this moon. Around him, warriors shared stories and food. Somewhere in the settlement, children played, already acting out the tale of the little Terran who became brother to the greatest tracker alive. In the sky above, 3 suns set in sequence, painting the world in colors that had no names in human languages, and thought about how far he had come from that first day when he stepped off the transport ship, small and mocked and alone. He was still small, but he was no longer alone, and he had learned what they were now learning, that the measure of a person wasn't in their height or strength or number of arms. It was in what they did when everyone said they couldn't. It was in what they endured when everyone said they wouldn't. It was in the choice to save rather than abandon, to heal rather than destroy, to prove worth through wisdom rather than weapons. These were human traits, but perhaps thought as he watched the warriors around him they could become something more, something shared, something that bridged the gap between species. He touched the token at his neck, proof that respect could be earned, that brotherhood could be chosen, and that sometimes the strangest friendships became the strongest bonds. Caught the gesture and nodded once, that simple movement that carried worlds of meaning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more to learn, more to prove, more to overcome. But tonight, surrounded by warriors who once mocked him and now called him brother, was content. He was home, and home could be found in the strangest places, among the strangest people, if you were brave enough to earn it.